It's a nice compliment.
not just looks, you know.
Yeah, it's nice to be around people who've lived a life and have something to say. And certainly you're that guy, Jim, on so many different levels from your work in Hollywood as a doctor, as a performer, and in the arts in general. Let's talk about your latest book. Such an intriguing title,
That I just happen to
Emotional
have here.
Incest. There it is, A Stolen Childhood. Tell us about that. What's the theme of this book?
All right. The truth is, Doctor, um, that's me on the front cover, the little puppy.
You look a
I
little
was
bit like
actually young.
Spanky McFarland in that picture.
I was actually young at one time,
Yeah.
um, a long time ago. What this brought about, and this is where, I have also, while we're pitching, you have the grief and loss book, right? And then we
Yeah.
have my 9 steps to a better life. And
Yeah.
then I have one called Celebrity Shrink. Okay, but we all have a life. And one of the important things when you're living is to recognize you're going through stuff. And my neighbor, who's French next door, a woman, she's in my age group, she saw the original cover. And the original cover was Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Anger.
Mhm.
And it took me 15 years to get to that point. Okay. And it was when my father died and I was 40 some years old. And at the AIDS clinic, they said, you have, you know, some bereavement days that you can take off. And I said, why? I said, I haven't talked to him in 5 years. And I said, I haven't talked to my mother in 20 years. So I said, I divorced them. And they're like, why would you divorce your family? Your mother and father you have to love. My mother was a sick lady. She had issues. My father had his issues. And I didn't realize until the day he died how angry I was at him for not stepping in. Now, that's when I discovered about emotional incest.
Mhm.
So I kept the title of the book until about a month ago when my neighbor came over and she saw the cover page inside.
Mhm.
And she said, which is this one here. And she said,
Yep.
why don't you make that the damn cover? And she said, when you're in a bookstore or when you're seeing stuff and you have all these colorful, crazy titles around,
Right.
she said, make it that stark white, oh my God, couple words on the cover. And she said, that'll make people stop and think, what the hell is it? When I started looking at it, 15, 20 years ago, I didn't realize there was such a thing. And I was married to my mother, not sexually, but emotionally. And when I started reviewing it, um, I found out that this was something that was happening at the time, but people didn't always know it. They'd call it covert incest, they'd call it whatever. A lot of families, there's power and control. You
Mhm.
know, uh, my friend calls himself, he said, my good Jewish grandmother, he said she always was, um, she'd be, oh, here's some tea and chocolate chip cookies. And when I said, oh, that's great, she'd bring me two more chocolate chip cookies and more tea. So
Yeah.
now you're going to like her even more. All right.
Yeah.
A lot of families, I deal with a lot of Hispanic families and Italian families where I'm your mother. It's your duty. It's your responsibility to do this. Okay, that's another way of control. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, one of my friends put the fact there that sometimes when you do things to people and for people, you're partly doing it to buy as authority, to buy control. A lot of if you know what a codependent person is,
Yeah.
they're do for everybody. And then when they need help, their friends aren't always there. You
Yeah.
know, and I know I said it to you once before. The idea if you have a pickup truck or a nice large SUV, you'll have friends on Saturday that you never had before, that you haven't heard from in 6 months. Hey, Logan, you still have your pickup truck? I just calling. I haven't talked to you in a while. And you're like, yeah, I do. Oh, good. I need to move a couch this weekend. Can you help me? And you're like,
Exactly.
I had things to do. Oh, well, what a friend you are. Bang. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
You're a friend of convenience.
Exactly. So I didn't realize, as I say, I try to remind the guys in my domestic violence group all the time, you're not, and this is sounds tacky, but in the AIDS days, I remember reminding people when they came in to test, when you're sleeping with somebody, when you're out dating somebody, you're not just sleeping with them or dating with them, but kind of everybody they've either slept with, been around with, or whatever. And
Yeah.
tacky, as far as STDs, you don't know what they might have picked up, but emotionally, you don't either,
Right.
you know. And that's where I do like Freud's idea, speaking of Pink Floyd, that, we're a product of nature and nurture.
Hmm.
There's certain things you can't change at birth. Race, creed, color, intelligence, IQ, sometimes you can't change. Ability to be able to sing. I always say go to a karaoke bar and the big dorky person gets up and you're shocked when you hear them sing. And then the good looking one comes up to sing and they can't sing for crap. But
Yeah.
then 4 hours later, after they've had 20 more drinks, they sing louder, but they still can't sing any better, right? That's the nature. The nurturing is what we learn as we grow. It's what we learn as we grow. And this is where, as I said, I found out my mother, uh, again, to make a short story long, but my mother's side of the family was Austro-Hungarian. My great grandfather was a Greek Catholic priest, Byzantine Catholic priest, excuse me. They were allowed to marry for a while so they could increase the population of the church.
Mm.
He got married, came to the United States. He had four daughters in 1900. Three of them went on the stage as Ziegfeld girls. Most of you would have no idea who the hell Ziegfeld is, but started the Broadway thing in New York. They went on the stage as the three Park sisters danced their hearts out. The fourth one was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm a real religious person. I don't want God to hate me. So she did the dutiful thing, got married, had a kid
Mhm.
who was my mother. And for some reason or other, her husband left her the day she was born, the day
Mm.
my mother was born. I'm out of there. This is Jersey. And he moved out to California. My mother grew up always sending him, like little girls often do, cute little cards and whatever because of the alimony. She never heard from him because in those days she didn't have phones and that to go across country.
Yeah.
When she was 19, she came across the country with a relative, knocked on the door in Long Beach, and she said, Hi, I'm your daughter, Marion, that's been sending you all of postcards and Christmas cards and little notes. And he said, You are dead. I've been paying for your mother for 20, 19 years. I'm done. I'll call the police if you don't leave. You are not mine. You're dead,
Mm.
which disturbed her. Okay.
Yeah.
And this was 1937, 8-day drive across the country back to New Jersey, and she never recovered. What did she do? She married a man a little older than her, who was 15 years older, my father.
Father figure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it, Dr. Logan. And that's exactly, but they don't do it purposely. There's a
Right.
difference between premeditated,
Premeditated.
premeditated. Some of us should be
Premedicated
medicated.
also.
But, when somebody falls in love with somebody, as they say, we know there's many people in our country that have married somebody from another country, and they say at some point, well, at least I got my citizenship and I was able to bring my parents here and everything. Okay.
Yeah.
That's premeditated.
Right.
When it just so happens, that's different. And so my mother didn't know what she was doing. She just was angry. So she married a gentleman. I mean, he was a smart guy. He was a businessman. He was a Mensa candidate, but he never did anything about it, and always older mindset. He was happy to read and do things and just think. She's tried to go on the stage. She got approved as a rockette for a little while. And then her mother said, You can't do that. People on the stage are tramps and trash. So my mother eventually, and I've said this to you, I think before maybe, but that's where the life, liberty, and pursuit of anger comes from.
Mm.
When I was teaching school back in the 70s, I remember for a little while, it was a temporary job for 10 years. I remember sitting down with a girl and I was playing acting principal. I was a special ed teacher, but I would do the acting principal stuff sometimes. And I remember dragging this girl and said, Wendy, Wendy, Wendy. I said, You and Jimmy are out there in the playground fooling around a little lot. I
Mm,
said, you're 14, I think, or 13. And I said, you could get in trouble with what you're doing. And I said, you could end up with a baby.
mm,
And she started crying for me, but then she turned to me and she said, but then I'd have something to love,
mm,
would love me forever.
mm.
When we have children, you're supposed to raise them to help them become good adults and move on. Okay. I mean, they'll still be part of your family, don't get me wrong, but you're supposed to
Supposed to
raise,
fly the nest.
yeah, and then yes, fly the nest, and then you raise your kids and do whatever. But I was shocked. I mean, I was in my 20s. I was probably 24 when she said that. And I thought, this is better than the books I've read, damn it.
Mm,
I'd never even thought about that. The boys don't think about that. My guys in the group are always saying, remember, men are logical, women are emotional. And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, when you start fooling around with a girl, how many of you think, oh, when I'm 30 and I have a 10-year-old son, should I be sitting down there and saying to him, your mom, I never should have married her, but she just got pregnant. Okay. Uh, that's not the goal. Girls, though, usually think of, he'd be a great father. When they see a celebrity, they see an entertainment person, they're like, oh, God, I'd love to be married to him. He'd
mm.
make such a great dad. We'd have such a great time. When the guys see somebody on the screen, they're like, hot chick.
Right.
That's all you need at the moment. Okay. So we have to come somewhere in the middle. And so that's when I realized my mother, okay, realized that she had me and she had no other, she couldn't have any more kids. I was an 8.5 month, 8.5 pound baby, and she was only 4'11". So
Mm,
when I came out of that womb, there aren't going to be any more kids out of there ever, ever, ever again. And so she knew it was it. And so she started keeping me home from school. I was
mm,
not a dummy. I skipped kindergarten because we didn't have kindergarten. I was a post-war student person. So I started first grade when I was 4.5 years old.
mm,
And then, I did okay. I started with a couple other 4 and 5 year olds, and most of them dropped out. I was the only one that stayed. And, I got along well with the teachers. I didn't like doing a lot of little kid things, but my mother would always say, hey, it's raining. Why'd you stay home today?
mm,
Okay, we were on the Jersey Shore. We were 2 houses from the water, the bay, the Raritan Bay, where you go into New York City.
mhm.
I can see New York City across the bay. We'd hop on the train, and in 25 minutes, we're in New York. The people at the Macy's there knew me. The seventh floor was the kids in those days. It's still a big, big
Department
department store.
store. Yeah.
But in those days, you didn't worry about kids getting raped and molested and whatever. So we'd go in. And my mother would say, "I'm going to be in the, women's department or in the housing thing, furniture." I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Here, little 7-year-old Jimmy's on the escalator. And if you know Macy's in there, there's wooden escalators still that they've
Yeah.
staved. And it was up on one of those floors. And the people up there, I was there 4 or 5 times a year, and they're like, oh, hi, how you doing, little Jimmy? You want to play with this stuff or this stuff? And I was fine. Okay. Why would I want to go to school?
Right.
Could go there and we could go to Sardi's for lunch. We could
Right.
we can go to the diners. There was a security guard at the Empire State Building that knew us because when we go back on the train or on the bus back to Jersey, my mother dropped me, we'd go in there to use the restroom because in the bus station it was a little scarier.
Mm,
But there, this guy, oh, you're here. Boom, take me to the restroom back. Um, she did that all the way through school. I missed as many as 50% of the school days. 180 school days, I'd miss 75
mm.
days. And I wasn't complaining. I'd stay home 1 week, 2 weeks. Now,
So
this
you're
is
a
where
kid, you're loving it. You're not in
I
school
was loving
where,
it.
you're uncomfortable and the teacher's reading the riot act to you. You're there with your mom, you're comfortable, you're eating out, you're going to Macy's, it's fun, it's good, except it's not
And
good for you, right?
no, but see, this is where we talked about the Zoom stuff too. Partly, I was home all the time. I didn't like being with other kids. I had a
Right.
real hard time with that. And it was a problem. And yeah. And eventually, of course, my mother was also attractive, so TMI, but she was sleeping with the school principal at the high school at one time, so I could stay out as much as I wanted without trouble. The teachers would make fun of me, and it really embarrassed me. I remember one time, teacher, eighth grade teacher, just before lunch, he says, "Mr. Gordon, looks like your mother's coming down the hallway again." And she would decide she was drunk. She was an alcoholic, convenience alcoholic. She didn't drink every day like a real alcoholic does. My father was good at that. My mother would just, whenever she couldn't control things, and she was coming down the hallway with eighth grade students in New Jersey, um, in her uh, bathrobe, but nothing much underneath it except maybe the bra. And the teacher's like, "Oh God, here she goes. Get her out of here as soon as you can." And that was my duty. I was 12 years old. I was 12 when I started high school, went off to high school, and it was embarrassing. And the teachers would make fun of me, you know, "You're never here. No wonder you don't know how to do this." So when my father died, I got really mad because I thought, son of a gun, why didn't you sometimes say something? They stayed married all their life,
Mm.
okay? But they were like, you know, I often wondered, how the hell did they have me? You know, they were perfectly happy to be in separate bedrooms and do it.
Right.
He
And
was
you were the
always
little
working.
miracle.
Yeah, he was always working out of the country or something to get out of town and all that. And so that's when I realized that I was really angry. And that's when also when I was 34, I came home and my mother was sitting, and that's what was the original thing that triggered all this. She was sitting at my house and she said, "I have good news for you. I'm leaving that bastard father of yours and I'm moving back in with you so we can be happily ever after."
Wow.
And I was like, son of a bitch. Sorry. But,
Amazing. Amazing.
so,
This is great material for a book. Obviously, it's called Emotional Incest,
yeah.
and it's a bit of a memoir that seems like it analyzes the
Oh, it
dysfunction
is.
within your family that other people might recognize the dysfunction in their own relationships and family, right, Jim?
And this is what I've found as I've talked about it. It's amazing how many people they say now there's a number of books about emotional incest. I have a website, emotionalincest.com. You can go check. And people are realizing it happens a lot. Both men, boys to their mom, and sometimes girls to their mom. And what I say in there, one of the first clues when mom and dad are fighting a lot and arguing a lot, and mom and dad are throwing frying pans at each other or whatever,
Yeah.
and you end up, mom, you know, and dad hit each other, whatever. Mom runs into the bedroom, throws herself on the bed, crying. And little Bobby, who's 7 years old, goes in, "Mom,
Comforting her.
are you okay?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "I am now that you're here." And the minute he hears that, that's now his caseload. He's taken a caseload on for life.
Perfect illustration of emotional incest, and that is the name of Dr. Jim Gordon's book. It sounds terrific. I can't wait to read it. Another book we've been talking about today is Grief and Loss, The Start We Call the End, edited by Betty DeGeneres. It is a powerful self-help book that offers guidance, comforting words, and actionable insights for anyone navigating the challenges of loss. And that includes a variety of different kinds of losses, from the death of a lost one to the end of a chapter in your life. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. Catch you next time.
I
It's
appreciate your
been good.
time,
It's been
sir.
good. It's been fun.
I
All
had
right.
fun talking to you as well. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.